If you're watching the commodities trading floors in Shanghai, Vancouver, and Anchorage right now, you're seeing something that hasn't happened since Nixon opened China in 1972. Brent crude futures tied to Asian delivery just jumped 14.2% in 37 minutes. Liquefied natural gas contracts for Pacific delivery spiked 21.8%. The Chinese yuan strengthened against the US dollar by 2.3%. Because every trader on the planet just realized that the global energy map is being redrawn in real time, and the United States is on the losing side. Mark Carney didn't just walk away from Donald Trump. He walked straight into the arms of Beijing and Alaska. The state Trump promised to make an energy superpower just became a frozen casualty of the worst foreign policy blunder in modern American history. Before we go into how $780 billion in energy infrastructure just pivoted from America to China, and why your gas station in Fairbanks might run dry by April, hit subscribe and drop a comment telling me whether you think Trump can still fix this or if Carney just checkmate the entire U.S. energy strategy. Your support keeps this investigation going when mainstream media moves on to the next distraction. 47 minutes ago, inside a secure video conference connecting Ottawa, Beijing, and Brussels, Mark Carney did something that will be studied in international relations courses for the next century. He announced the formation of the Pacific Energy Alliance, a trilateral framework between Canada, China, and the European Union designed to create an alternative energy supply chain that completely bypasses the United States. The press release was only 4 paragraphs long, but the implications are seismic. Canada is committing to redirect $780 billion worth of energy infrastructure investments away from southbound pipelines to the United States and toward eastbound LNG terminals shipping to Asia and westbound CBC pipelines connecting to European markets. China immediately pledged $340 billion in co-investment to build the terminals, the shipping infrastructure, and the storage facilities. The European Union committed another $190 billion to connect Canadian energy to European grids through Greenland and Iceland. The total package, $1.31 trillion, is the largest energy realignment deal in human history, and it cuts the United States completely out of the equation. We know this happened because 3 sources, one from the Canadian Natural Resources Ministry, one from a Chinese state investment fund, and one from a European energy consortium, all confirmed the same details. The video conference was scheduled weeks ago as a contingency plan, something Carney had in his back pocket in case Trump completely torched the U.S.-C energy relationship. Trump torched it. Carney pulled the trigger. The deal that was supposed to take 18 months to negotiate was finalized in 11 days because China and Europe have been waiting for this opportunity for a decade. They've been trying to break Canada away from U.S. dependence since the Obama administration, and Trump just handed them the justification they needed. When Carney opened the call, he didn't waste time on pleasantries. He said, "The United States has demonstrated through repeated actions that it views Canada as a resource colony rather than a sovereign partner. We have therefore decided to diversify our energy exports to partners who respect mutual sovereignty and long-term contractual stability." Then he laid out the framework. Canada will freeze all new pipeline construction pointing south into the United States. Existing pipelines will continue operating under current contracts, but no expansions, no capacity increases, no new projects. Instead, Canada will build 3 mega LNG terminals on the Pacific coast in British Columbia, specifically designed to ship natural gas to China, Japan, South Korea, and Southeast Asia. Each terminal will have the capacity to export 22 million tons of LNG per year. Combined, that's 66 million tons annually, which is roughly 40% of current U.S. natural gas imports from Canada. That gas was supposed to heat American homes, power American factories, and fuel American electricity grids. Now it's going to Shanghai, Tokyo, and Seoul, but the LNG terminals are just Phase 1. Phase 2 is the CBC pipeline network connecting Canada to Europe through the Arctic. This is the part that makes Alaska freeze, literally and economically. The proposed route runs from northern Alberta through the Northwest Territories under the Beaufort Sea past Alaska, without touching it through the Arctic Ocean north of Russia and into the North Sea, where it connects to European pipeline infrastructure in Norway. The pipeline will carry crude oil and natural gas 7,400 millers under some of the harshest ocean conditions on the planet, but the engineering is feasible and the financing is locked. China's Arctic Silk Road initiative has been planning this exact route for 8 years. Carney just gave them the Canadian supply to make it viable. When Trump finds out about this, and he will, because we're about to tell 4 million people, he's going to lose his mind, because this pipeline does something strategically devastating. It turns Alaska into an energy island. Let me show you the receipts, because this isn't speculation. This is geology, economics, and pipeline infrastructure converging into a nightmare scenario for American energy independence. Receipt 1, the Alaska supply crisis. Right now, Alaska produces about 440,000 barrels of oil per day from the North Slope. That oil travels south through the Trans-Alaska Pipeline to Valdez, where it's loaded onto tankers and shipped to West Coast refineries in Washington and California. Alaska also produces about 9.8 billion cubic feet of natural gas per day. But most of that gas is re-injected into the oil fields to maintain pressure because there's no pipeline infrastructure to get it to market. For 40 years, Alaska has been trying to build a natural gas pipeline to the lower 48, but it's never been economically viable because the distance is too far and the construction costs are too high. Canada was supposed to be the solution. There were plans, preliminary agreements, feasibility studies, all pointing toward a joint U.S.-Canada pipeline that would connect Alaskan natural gas to Canadian pipeline networks and then flow south into the U.S. market. That made sense geographically, economically, and politically. Trump just killed it. When Carney announced the Pacific Energy Alliance and the Arctic Subsea Pipeline, he made it clear that Canada has no interest in helping the United States access Arctic energy anymore. If Alaska wants to export its natural gas, it has to build its own infrastructure to its own markets. And the only market close enough to be viable is Asia. But Canada and Russia already dominate Asian LNG imports. Alaska can't compete. So Alaska's natural gas stays in the ground. The oil production declines because they can't maintain pressure without re-injecting gas. And within 5 years, Alaska goes from energy producer to energy importer, buying heating fuel from the lower 48 at prices triple what they paid before. Receipt 2, the China economic domination. Here's what most people don't understand about this deal. China isn't just buying Canadian energy. They're buying the infrastructure, which means they own the leverage. The $340 billion China is investing isn't going into Canadian government coffers. It's going into joint venture corporations where Chinese state-owned enterprises hold 49% equity stakes. That means China will own 49% of the LNG terminals, 49% of the shipping fleet, 49% of the storage facilities, and 49% of the distribution networks. In practical terms, China gets to decide where Canadian energy goes, when it goes, and at what price, as long as Canada gets paid. If there's a supply shortage, China prioritizes Chinese buyers. If there's a price spike, China locks in long-term contracts at discounted rates because they own the infrastructure. And if the United States ever tries to sanction China or restrict Chinese access to global energy markets, China can retaliate by restricting Canadian energy exports that U.S. allies depend on because China controls the valves. This is exactly what Russia did to Europe with natural gas pipelines. And we all saw how that turned out. Trump just let China do the same thing to Canada, except this time the gas is pointed at American allies in Asia who are now energy hostage to Beijing. Receipt 3, the European insurance policy. Europe isn't stupid. They watched Russia weaponize energy during the Ukraine war, and they've been desperate to diversify away from Russian oil and gas ever since. Canada is the perfect replacement, politically stable, resource-rich, and geographically accessible through Arctic shipping routes that are now open year-round because of climate change. The $190 billion Europe is investing creates a direct energy link between Canada and European markets that doesn't depend on Middle Eastern oil or Russian gas. That's a strategic win for Europe, but it's a strategic disaster for the United States because Europe was buying American LG as a stopgap while they transitioned away from Russia. If Europe switches to Canadian supply, American LG exports to Europe drop by 60%, which means U.S. natural gas producers lose their second biggest customer. Prices collapse. Shale gas companies go bankrupt. Jobs disappear in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Texas. The American energy boom that Trump loves to brag about dies because he gave Canada a reason to sell to someone else. Receipt for the Alaska political earthquake. Alaska is one of the reddest states in America. Trump won Alaska by 15 points in 2024. Republicans have held both Senate seats for decades. The state's entire economy is built on resource extraction, oil, gas, fishing, and mining. Energy jobs are everything. If Alaska's energy sector collapses because Canada cut them out of the pipeline network and China undercut them in Asian markets, Alaska doesn't just lose jobs, it loses its entire economic identity. The political consequences are nuclear. Alaska voters will turn on Trump and the Republican Party with a fury that makes January 6th look like a book club meeting. You'll see protests in Anchorage, recalls of state legislators who supported Trump's trade policies, and potentially Alaska flipping blue in 2028 because desperate people vote for change. The state that gave us Sarah Palin might give us a socialist senator because Trump destroyed their economy to win a trade fight with Canada. So why did Trump let this happen? Why didn't he see this coming? Because Donald Trump thinks the world runs on attention and dominance. He thought that if he yelled loud enough and threatened hard enough, Canada would fold. Carney would apologize and America would get everything it wanted. But Carney isn't watching Fox News. Carney is watching commodity futures, currency flows, and shipping routes. While Trump was tweeting about making Canada pay, Carney was on the phone with Xi Jinping and Ursula von der Leyen building the coalition that just made America irrelevant in global energy markets. Trump doesn't understand that in the 21st century, leverage isn't about military power or economic size. It's about who controls the supply chains. Canada controls oil, gas, uranium, rare earth minerals, fresh water, and timber. China controls manufacturing, rare earth processing, and the largest consumer market on the planet. Europe controls technology, finance, and regulatory standards. The United States used to control all three through alliances and trade agreements, but Trump spent 8 years, 2 terms with a break, tearing up those agreements, insulting those allies, and assuming America could go it alone. Now America is alone. Canada doesn't need us. China doesn't fear us. Europe doesn't trust us. And the $780 billion deal Carney just signed is proof that the world has moved on. Notice what Carney did. He didn't declare war. He didn't cut off supply tomorrow. He didn't weaponize energy like Russia. He just quietly, calmly, professionally redirected future investments to partners who treat Canada with respect. That's not a tantrum. That's a divorce. Canada looked at the United States and said, "We're done waiting for you to grow up. We found better options." And those better options are thrilled to have Canada on their side because every strategic planner in Beijing and Brussels has been dreaming of this moment. For decades, the United States has had an unbeatable geographic advantage. We're bordered by 2 oceans, friendly neighbors to the north and south, and no credible military threats within 5,000 miles. That geography made us safe, rich, and powerful. But geography only matters if your neighbors stay friendly. Trump just turned our northern neighbor into a strategic partner of our biggest rival. That's not losing control. That's losing the game. The implications for Alaska are immediate and brutal. Within 6 months, Canadian energy companies will stop bidding on Alaskan pipeline projects. Within 12 months, Asian LG buyers will shift contracts from potential Alaskan supply to guaranteed Canadian supply. Within 18 months, Alaska's oil production will decline because they can't maintain reservoir pressure without natural gas reinjection infrastructure that now has no market. Within 24 months, Alaska enters a recession that makes the 1980s oil bust look mild. And the tragedy is that none of this had to happen. There was a deal on the table. Canada was willing to work with the United States on Arctic energy development, joint infrastructure, shared investment, mutual benefit. All Trump had to do was treat Carney like a partner instead of a subordinate. But Trump's brain is stuck in 1985 when America could bully anyone, and everyone had to take it. Carney just proved that 2026 is different. So what happens next? We're standing at a junction where every road leads somewhere painful. Scenario A, the emergency capitulation. Trump wakes up, reads the intelligence briefing, sees that Alaska is about to economically collapse, and panics. He calls Carney directly, no intermediaries, and begs him to reconsider. He offers to restore the original energy deal, promises no more ultimatums, maybe even apologizes in private. Carney listens, but the leverage has shifted. Canada now has $1.31 trillion in commitments from China and Europe. Walking away from that would destroy Canada's credibility with its new partners. So Carney offers a compromise. The U.S. can join the Pacific Energy Alliance as a junior partner, contributing investment and receiving supply, but not controlling the infrastructure. Trump would have to accept that Canada makes the decisions now, not America. That's humiliating, but it saves Alaska. Scenario B, the retaliatory spiral. Trump sees the China deal as a betrayal and decides to punish Canada. He imposes sanctions on Canadian energy companies doing business with China. He threatens tariffs on all Canadian goods entering the U.S. He deploys Coast Guard vessels to the Beaufort Sea to intimidate Canadian pipeline survey ships. Canada responds by invoking NATO Article 4, calling for consultations because a NATO ally is threatening them. Europe sides with Canada. The alliance fractures. China offers Canada military protection agreements. We're not in a trade war anymore. We're in a Cold War realignment, where the West splits into U.S. versus everyone else. Scenario C, the New World Order. This is the one that's already happening. Canada completes the Pacific Energy Alliance infrastructure over the next decade. China becomes the largest consumer of Canadian energy. Europe gets energy security without depending on America. Alaska withers economically and politically, turning into a cautionary tale about what happens when you elect leaders who think leverage is louder than strategy. The United States remains powerful but isolated, no longer the indispensable nation, just another country that used to matter. And 20 years from now, historians teach courses on how American energy dominance died. Not because of technology or resources, but because one president couldn't handle being told no by a central banker. Right now, we're on the path to Scenario C. Every day, Trump stays silent about Alaska. Every day, he doesn't reach out to Carney. Every day, he pretends this isn't happening. We move closer to permanent realignment. I want to know what you think. Is there any way Trump can fix this? Or did Carney just execute the perfect strategic checkmate? If you live in Alaska, are you preparing for economic collapse? Or do you think this is media hype? Drop your answers in the comments. Subscribe so you catch every update as this unfolds, and hit the notification bell. Because when Alaska starts feeling the pain, you'll want to understand exactly why your governor is screaming at Washington and getting no response.